It is time for the Inside Scoop with Herald Editor-at-Large Shayne Currie. TVNZ has a new quiz show on the way. Shayne, thanks for being with us. What can you tell us about the new quiz show?
Morning, Michael. Good to be here. Yeah, big week in media with the public results for both Sky TV and NZME, our own company. But this morning, delving into actually the plight of TVNZ, which is due to announce its own results in the next few weeks for last year. But you'll know, I hope very well, that The Chase for TVNZ is a very popular quiz show that gives them a good audience leader for the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit of, I guess, succession planning going on within TVNZ as to what they do ultimately to, look at that 5 o'clock slot and whether or not another show could potentially take over one day. There's a show called Tipping Point, which they do screen the UK version of at the moment during the day. And it's increasingly popular around the world, very popular in Australia. In fact, right now in Australia, Tipping Point outrates The Chase. And so TVNZ's seen this and in fact is investing quite a substantial amount of money into creating its own Tipping Point New Zealand show, investing in a set which they'll screen and produce out of its Victoria Street, Auckland studios in April. And I see this really, it won't replace The Chase straight away, it'll be in prime time. But I see it as potentially, if it goes well, an option for them in future to have a local show at 5 o'clock, supported by local advertisers, to give them another boost into that 6 o'clock news period.
Wow, and I mean that lead-in period is so key. I remember working for years at 3, and we had Home and Away, TVNZ had The Chase, and it was always, and then when Home and Away went away, it was like, what do we put there now? So this new show that's going to come before the One News, who's tipped to host that? Yeah,
it's a good question. TVNZ were a bit coy about the entire project actually last night when I approached them, but we've got a quiz running our own quiz running in the media column today, and right now, we've put up about 8 or 9 names there, and the likes of Simon Barnett, Tony Street, even Mike Hosking. All these names are there, and our readers are certainly voting with their fingers. So, I think there are a lot of options for TVNZ. They kind of, there's obviously people associated with their rivals that they probably don't go near, but there are a lot of other potentials at the moment. But I have heard a lot of celebrities have been approached to actually be contestants on the show.
Okay.
And again, if that is successful, I think everyday Kiwis will then be invited in to perhaps a longer season once the pilot finishes.
Yeah, okay, we'll watch the space it gets. So let's talk about Stuff's deal to deliver the 6 p.m. news for 3. It's sort of halfway done now, so how are they performing?
Yeah, well, I guess as an extension of what we just talked about, Michael, there's Sky announced its results yesterday, and one of the kind of watch outs for them is the lagging and continuing problems with linear television advertising. It's really not bounced back as well as they expected. One of the issues for Sky and for now 3 News, since they've taken over TV3 last year, bought it for $1 of course, is the ratings for the 6 o'clock news, which is produced by Stuff. Stuff has had that contract since July 2024 and it runs for an initial 3 years. It's run on a fairly much a shoestring compared with what we see from TVNZ and the full resources of that newsroom. However, they do a good job. It's a dedicated small team doing a good job, but the ratings gap is pretty large at the moment. And I think if once the contract comes up for renewal next year, after that 3-year period, we'll see Stuff probably wanting a slightly better deal, perhaps a revenue share deal, or at least a little bit more money up front so that it can resource that bulletin even more strongly. The ratings, we've delved into the ratings in this morning's column, and there's something like now around a 400,000 gap each evening in terms of average audience.
Wow, okay, so it's quite significant. Okay, so and Stuff's also facing eviction at their Wellington printing press.
Well,
why is that?
This is a fascinating topic. You might remember an outspoken businessman called Troy Bowker, who's been in the headlines off and on over the years. He was once a shareholder of NZME, quite an outspoken critic of media in New Zealand generally and the way that he perceives media is performing. However, he acquired the Petone print press last year from Nine Entertainment in Australia. Stuff has had that building for now 35 years, leasing it to print their Post newspaper. Troy Bowker's moved in, bought the building, And he says when that lease comes up next year, he'll be turfing Stuff out. So this is a major for Stuff. They probably face costs of millions of dollars in terms of having to remove all their print plant equipment and find at least another building, or they might have to strike a deal with another media company such as NZME or Whakatane's Beacon Press to print their newspapers in the North Island.
Okay, quite a bit of upheaval then. NBR has found a new target for their subscription lawsuits. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is an ongoing story. NBR is leading a bit of a crusade over the last 6 months in terms of ensuring that private companies and public agencies are paying their fair share of subscriptions and that they're not breaching paywall copyright stories. And NBR has already uncovered 3 or 4 cases of government departments which it claims has allegedly breached copyright and is seeking legal action and likely to take some of them to court. The most recent example, which we delve into today, is MBIE. MBIE's got around 100 subscriptions now to NBR, but NBR says they've been sharing stories and accessing stories far beyond that number.
Okay. Just finally, and critically important, I guess, hey, and just to be clear here, I'm not a fan and do not care about maths, but have you got to the bottom
Michael.
of...
This is the most vexing question in New Zealand media at the moment.
So why are we waiting?
So maths, an incredibly popular show, but we went straight to the top yesterday and spoke to Sky Chief Executive Sophie Maloney, exactly wondering why are we waiting a week between the Australian episode and before it's screened in New Zealand. Of course, heaps of spoilers, heaps of news media stories coming out of Australia about what's going on in this crazy, wild show that is maths. Sophie was going to look into it, but unfortunately the PR person came back to me and said it's, it is on a weekly time frame, and it is unfortunately going to have to remain the way that New Zealanders have to wait a week, which seems crazy to me when, in this day and age, when we're fully converged, we're seeing movies and, all the top TV shows at the same time as Americans and Aussies. But not Maths Australia. This is the one that's holding out.
Okay, well that is kind of bizarre, but I guess spoilers.
Get your head down. Don't look at the website.
Right. Shayne Currie, thanks so much for being with us this morning. That is Shayne Currie, Herald Editor at Large.